Harry W. Heath. I'm 82 years old. I reside in Cicero, New York, and a proud member of the chosen few.
Okay, that's great. So, how do you feel about participating in this project based on your experience so far and talking to other veterans about it?
Well, I am concerned because of late the Korean War has become a forgotten war. It's got to where even the politicians will skip from World War II to Vietnam and forget there was a little skirmish in between there where we lost 33,000 men in combat and a total of 57,000 men altogether as casualties. That's the only part that upsets me is not that I'm looking for glory, and I'm pretty sure we're not, but I feel that the Korean War was an important war, probably one of the most important in modern warfare, because technically it stopped the spread of communism, that war, and to forget it, I think, is wrong.
Well, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, because a lot of veterans have voiced that concern regarding the fact that it's a forgotten war, and many times they bring up that when the war first started, everyone thought it was going to be over by Christmas, and clearly that wasn't the case, and it was in fact a big war. And how does that make you feel that people overlook it?
Well, I had assumed that I didn't think I'd be home by Christmas, but I thought the war would be stopped by Christmas. But November the 27th, 1950, gave me a rude awakening that it wasn't. That's when we were first attacked by the Chinese communists who came across the Manchurian border and surrounded us. And at that point, I knew this is not going to end it.
So what were you thinking at that point?
Not much. I mean, at the time, really, I think is saving our people getting out of there. Yeah. You know, there was 15,000 Marines and Army and British Royal Marines at the Chosen, and there was an estimated 150,000 to 200,000 Chinese communists. And when we were surrounded, we lost 3,000 men in approximately 11 to 14 days. That's a lot of men.
Yeah.
And but our motto was, we can't win, we can't lose, but we're not going to give up. And we didn't. And fortunately, we were able to bring all our dead and wounded, and plus 100,000 immigrants were brought out of North Korea that otherwise may have been slaughtered by the Chinese communists or the North Koreans. And that was a happy moment because we were able to bring all the women, children out on boats that, from talking, I wasn't there at that time, but with talking to some of my friends who were there, it was a tremendous feat to get all those people on those ships and get out of there.
Did that make the war kind of seem like, give you more of an idea of what you were fighting for?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I mean, we're fighting aggression. Now, they did a lot of atrocities, the communists and the North Koreans, to Korean civilians because they thought they were cooperating with American troops. Whether they did or not, they would slaughter them. And to me, saving those people, and I'll grant you at least South Korea kept its territory without losing any. And that's the main thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important story that you're telling, because seems like a lot of veterans or soldiers that are fighting, they kind of get bogged down in just trying to survive. But you were able to identify this kind of greater scheme of, why you guys were over there and what you were really fighting for.
Yeah, and fortunately, we were able to bring out a lot of our dead and wounded, because I was in the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines under Colonel Taplett, and that was what he said. We're not leaving anybody behind.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I'm here.
You are? When did you actually arrive in Korea?
I didn't go to Korea until September the 15th, 1950 at Incheon. We made the landing at Wamido Island, which was off the coast of Incheon, the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine. We had to take that island before they could actually have made the Incheon landing. And they were kind of surprised by the time that it took us to win that island. 1 hour and a half.
It's not too long.
Which really was greater time than what MacArthur thought.
Really?
Oh yeah, he thought it would take longer. And then they made the Incheon landing. I didn't make that at that time. But, and then advancing through Seoul and making our way up through North Korea. Once we crossed the 38th parallel, was quite an experience. Yeah.
What was that experience like? I mean, I'd like you to, give me an idea of what you were thinking when you first landed in Korea, regarding the countryside or maybe the poverty that you saw, and then kind of throughout your experience going up.
I know this is going to sound crazy, but I didn't think.
Yeah.
My mind was not. I was just doing what I had to do, and I tell some of my friends when I came home, I said I was like in a fog all the time I was over there. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but.
Well, you were focused on your mission, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have time to get scared.
Yeah.
I probably was afraid, scared, but I didn't have time to get scared.
Yeah.
We knew prior to the November 27th, we used to see the Chinese communists come across the border all the time. But we couldn't do nothing about it because President Harry Truman didn't want to get China into a third war. But what happened?
They got into it.
If we could have did something while those guys were coming across, we wouldn't have had the chosen reservoir trip.
Yeah.
We used to be able to fly our planes to the Manchurian border, and that was it. We had to turn around and come back. I thought I read once where Truman told MacArthur he could bomb half a bridge. But if he can bomb half a bridge, I'd like to know how.
Yeah.
You bomb half a bridge, And some people say I'm biased at that. I felt Truman had a lot to do with, not everybody agrees with me, but I just felt that everybody knocks General MacArthur, but I thought either you fight a war to win or don't fight it. And I'm afraid that's what we're doing now.
So did you, as a person fighting on the ground, is it maybe frustrating when you see firsthand what's going on and what you could be doing to make the situation better?
Yeah, you'd see it and you couldn't do nothing about it. We'd be on patrol and we'd see these guys, lines of them coming across the border and couldn't do nothing. But I just, probably the battle I remember most is the Chosen Reservoir because that affected me more than...
How did it affect you?
Well, I froze my hands and feet and I spent 2.5 months in a hospital. It was 40 degrees below zero there, and our equipment at that time, believe it or not, was not the best. We had felt shoe packs, which were rubber on the bottom and leather on top, with a felt insert. Now, when you would walk, your feet would perspire, and when you got pinned down, your feet wouldn't be moving and they would freeze in there. And I didn't think they were the greatest thing in the world. I mean, we had the parka and like that. In fact, at the reservoir, I think I had 3 pairs of pants on. We couldn't change. There was no place to go to change. You couldn't shave, couldn't wash, couldn't do anything because of the cold. 40 degrees.
So you're living in some
cold.
Pretty tough circumstances then.
Yeah.
Not to mention you were fighting.
Yeah, and we call, we have a club called the Chosen Few. And in order to join it, you have to have been at the Chosen Reservoir. And no one else can join. And it's like a last man's club. And it's one of my proud clubs that I'm a member of because not everybody can join it. And I find most of the guys coming back from the Chosen are suffering from either frostbite or post-traumatic stress or other problems. So that's how it affected me after the war, was still having problems with my legs and feet and hands, that pain, and it just changed my life entirely. I don't know what I would have done with my life if I had not gone to Korea. I mean, that's something you can't foretell because I don't know. I might have been down on the streets, but I think it made me a better person, I hope.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like you recognize the cause that you were fighting for, so...
Beg your pardon?
It seems that you recognize the cause that you were fighting for, and I mean, clearly we've seen Korea develop over the past...
Yeah, I've always felt proud of the fact that I was able to be in Korea and fight for her. A strange thing is when I came back from Korea, I was home on leave once and one of my friends said, "Harry, where you been? I haven't seen you in a long time." I said, "I've been in Korea." He said, "Well, where's Korea?" So that lets you know.
And that's a story that I've heard in almost every interview that we've done here. People just had no idea what Korea was, what was going on. Did you know anything about it before you left?
Korea?
Before you left to go to Korea, did you know anything about it?
No.
Yeah.
They never, I mean, I knew I was going to Korea when they first gave us our orders. But I didn't know that much about Korea. But I will say that I'm proud to have served the Korean people. I appreciate the way they have treated us since the Korean War and showed their appreciation. And they're one of the few countries, I think, that does show appreciation for us intervening. A lot of the countries that during World War II or other countries that we've been supported since then, they don't show any appreciation, but the Korean people do. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's nice to be recognized sometimes.
Yeah, it's, you know, I guess everybody does that, you know. But I find that a lot of the guys are suffering from post-traumatic stress. There's instances that happen at the reservoir that you really don't want to talk about, that bring back bad memories. I won't talk about it. And to tell you the truth, when I came home from Korea, I spent 50-some years and never mentioned the fact that I was in Korea. My wife really, until I moved to Syracuse here and I met a group of Korean War veterans, and then you start talking with them, but you didn't talk with people about it. I never even joined veterans organizations because I think I was trying to forget it, you know.
So was it a relief or helpful to you when you finally did?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
My life really was in like a turmoil. I worked all the time, but I changed jobs a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, your whole personality changed.
Yeah. How do you think it changed?
I used to be bashful, shy. And after I got out, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
But I never talked about the Korean War.
Was it hard to not talk about it? Did you kind of...
No, I just blocked it out of my mind.
Yeah. Did your family ever ask about it?
No, and I never told them.
Yeah. Maybe they knew it was off limits.
Yeah, I was a policeman, and I rode with a guy for years, and it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I found out he was a Korean War veteran too.
Really?
And neither one of us ever talked about it.
So it's a common thing?
We just happened to I said, gee, I'm going to a Korean War party or something. He said, were you in Korea? I said, yeah. He said, so was I, you know. And I said, I never knew that. And we rode together all that time.
Yeah.
I lived next door to the American Legion, never joined it.
Yeah.
I just wiped it out.
So do you think it has been helpful to you to join these organizations and be able to talk about your experiences?
Oh yeah. It's a lot better because then you're getting it out and you don't seem like you're telling war stories. Because you're talking to guys who went through the same thing. So you're not going to baloney them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, maybe it helps you kind of cope with the past, that you can relate to someone else and share their experience.
Yeah, you know, and I look forward sometime when we get together and shoot the fat, but that ends it right there. You know, you walk out the door and you really, most of the time, don't discuss it with anybody else.
So, you opening up with the chosen few and in the Korean War,
I was asked to do an interview many times, and I didn't want to do it. But I figured I'd do this one because it'll give me a chance to express my appreciation to the Korean people, how they treated us after the Korean War. Yeah. But I guess that's about all I got.
So, what year were you actually discharged from the military?
Beg your pardon?
What year were you discharged from the military?
Well, I got discharged in 1951, August. I got flew out of Korea because of my frozen hand disease. And I went to the hospital for about 2 months and a half. Then I did stateside duty for a while, and then I got discharged.
Yeah. Have you ever had a chance to return to Korea?
There's a lot of chances because they sponsor a trip back. But my wife doesn't fly, and I don't go any place without my wife. She's been my support all these years, and I do everything with my wife.
Yeah.
And for me to go alone
Would not.
it wouldn't be worth it. But
How do you think she feels about your participation in this project?
participation,
In the project?
this one,
Yes.
she really doesn't say anything. She really supports me in stuff that I do, which you need. You need someone to be there, say, yeah, do it. But she'll also tell her opinion if it's not, and then she says, do what you want to, you know what I mean? So, like I said, I did it this time, and because I just want to let Dr. Han and the rest of the Korean people know that I appreciate what they have done for the veterans and like that.
Well, I'm sure they appreciate everything that you've done as well. I guess some concluding thoughts on the interview. I'd like you to maybe, if you could provide maybe a message for future generations of children or students that will, in doing homework or doing research, look up this project and look up your name and try to find out more about the Korean War and the experiences that the veterans have had. Maybe if you could give some final thoughts or...
Well, what I would like to see them do in school, if they don't want to teach all about the Korean War, is to at least include it, part of it, in the history. A lot of the students are very interested in learning about the Korean War. A lot of times you go into schools and talk to them, and they are really interested. But in the school, I hate to say it, they don't teach about any war. I don't know why. The wars are an important part of our history. We wouldn't have the United States if it wasn't for a war, the Revolutionary War. So, why forget what has happened to some of the citizens of this country? I mean, World War II, we had guys on the beach in Normandy, and then we had Incheon landing in Korea, and you have Vietnam, and you have all these other. Well, that's important to the history of this country, I feel. And I don't know, and I probably shouldn't say this, if it's the liberalism of the teachers nowadays that they just don't want to teach it, or the schools themselves have blocked it out. In fact, if we let some people go, we wouldn't even have a flag in the schools, which to me is what this whole nation's about, patriotism.
Did you find that when you got home from Korea, people understood what was going on, what you went through after the war?
No. Nobody knew about it. Nobody talked about it. I don't remember ever reading about anniversaries or anything of the Korean War when I was home prior to coming here to Syracuse, and where they had an active Korean War Veterans Association.
So how do you think this experience of coming home from the war and the lack of knowledge about Korea compares to the soldiers' experience now in Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of people's impressions of what they're doing over there and in the war in general?
Well, I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen. These guys will come home, and if we end the war, and that's going to forget it. You won't see these big parades and all that then. When we came home, nobody greeted us. We didn't have any bands or nothing. We just came home. And I think that's why a lot it isn't, give them more publicity than it has or what, but like I said, I came home and the guy didn't even know that I left town, so, and where I was.
Well, all I can say is that we recognize everything.
Well, I appreciate this.